Hello, welcome to Insights and Sounds, Professor Wang. So today it's with great pleasure that we welcome Professor Wang Bingyu from Nankai University to this program. Professor Wang is a professor in sociology at Nankai University in China, and she has been a prolific researcher and writer and published extensively on top-tier journals in migration studies, including the Journal of Ethnic Migration Studies, as well as Zhou Forum, Population, Place and Space. Yeah, and I think if you are familiar with the field global knowledge mobilities, education mobilities, you definitely have read Professor Wang's work. So Professor Wang is also associate editor at the journal James. So it's with such pleasure that we have Professor Wang with us today. To start with today's interview, perhaps we could have Professor Wang to give us a short introduction on the latest research that she has been working on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And also, I'm very glad to be a part of the Insights and Sounds interview program of Bristol University. So I'm very happy to share my research with the audience of this program. And thank you, Juan, for the invitation and the introduction.
And so what have you been working on lately?
So recently, I have been doing research projects related to the knowledge mobilities between the global north and the south. And specifically, I have mainly examined 4 types of academic mobility groups, which are foreign scholars coming to China, and also those Chinese scholars returning to China, and those Chinese scholars who are currently working and living overseas, and also those Chinese international students that move between the global north and the south. So during my research, I mainly have this geographic focus on the Asia Pacific and a theoretical focus on emotions, migration aspirations, time, temporality, infrastructures, and the everyday to look at their mobility and immobility, trajectories, experiences, and aspirations. Yes.
Yeah, I'm very interested to find out more about the migration infrastructure that have been one of the focus of your research work. And in one of your recent articles, you talked about a very interesting concept from the below migration infrastructure. I wonder if you could give us a little bit more on that concept.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I have recently published 2 papers. One of them is in Journal of Ethnic Migration Studies. Another one is in Zhou Forum. And those 2 papers have, both of those 2 papers have utilized the migration infrastructure approach to look at the mobility and immobility experiences of 2 mobility groups, which are foreign scholars coming to China and those Chinese international students who decided to stay put in China during the COVID-19. I think by what I mean by from the below infrastructures, I mean I do not only look at those from the above migration infrastructures, those that are taken for granted, that we take for granted, such as migration policies, visa regimes, but I also want to look at those more mundane forms of infrastructures, such as those facilities and services that are more everyday, that are more utilized at the level of everyday. For example, I have looked at those digital technologies such as WeChat and Didi apps that are utilized by foreign scholars in China, and those digital technologies such as those online learning devices and apps and teaching platforms that have been fully utilized by those Chinese international students who undertook online courses. So I think the majority of the research that have been conducted under the infrastructure approach have mainly focused on the commercial aspect of migration infrastructures to perceive migration as this big business. But I think it is also quite meaningful to perceive migration as a quotating process, to look at how those more mundane forms, more everyday forms of migration infrastructure, such as workplaces and social networks, how these more quotating forms of infrastructures intimately affect the emotions, the subjectivities, the everyday socializing habitus, and their daily routines of those mobile subjects. Yeah. So that's what I mean by from the below migration infrastructure. And apart from this point, I have also tried to focus on another aspect of migration infrastructure as a theoretical approach, which is I redirected the thinking of migration infrastructure from perceiving them as forces, social actors, and institutions that enable people to move, but also to look at them as forces, institutions, and social actors that enable people to stay. So I want to look at those migration infrastructures under the immobility context. So those are the points that I have tried to make within these two papers.
Yeah, so you just mentioned very interesting the use of the technological platforms such as the messaging app WeChat or the ride-hailing app Didi. So probably people who are not familiar with, they could just say these are just apps that people use. So why do you think they constitute part of the migration infrastructure and that become so important in migrant lives?
I think that's a really good question, because everybody, lots of scholars, including myself, used to or even right now to question how can we differentiate things that are migration infrastructure and that are not. But to me, I think we should not simply deny something as a form of migration infrastructure just because it is not specifically designed for migrants, or it is not migrant only, or they are not migrant friendly, because I think for example, WeChat, this is an app for everything in China and is a significant feature of the Chinese lifestyle. Everybody basically in China use WeChat. So for those foreign scholars who are currently working and living in China, I think negotiating the use or learning to use WeChat is an important way of better adapting to the local lifestyle of China. And also, I think by utilizing WeChat, they can find more options or access to socialize with local people, with their local friends, with their Chinese students, with their Chinese colleagues, and also with more and more foreigners using WeChat in China. And also, they can meet more, how to say that, more friends who are from the same home country with them. So I think utilizing WeChat can blur the boundary or between themselves and the local people, which is useful for them to how to say that, to facilitate their homemaking process in China, to feel more belong to China with time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. So this reminds me of sort of a lot of the recent studies start to really document this trend of more and more foreign scholars or scholars from perhaps the what we call northern locations started to migrate elsewhere to the perhaps previously not so popular locations such as, for example, South Asia, Middle East, and we could see that the global academic circulation patterns have been shifting. So what are your observations on these new patterns?
Yeah, I think we indeed can see that along with the growing importance and prominence of the Global South in the international knowledge system, the traditional or dominant moving trend that from the Global South to the North has indeed become destabilized or challenged, so a reverse trend that moving from the global north to the south has started to occur. I think with this phenomenon, I think there are at least two reasons. So first, from the West, I think we can all agree that the academia, the academic labor market in the West has become increasingly competitive, or even I think this is a global phenomenon as well. So the whole academic labor market has become increasingly competitive, and the people are finding more and more difficult to find a permanent, to land on a permanent job offer. So I think. So more and more scholars in the West start to realize maybe going overseas to work is not a really bad option. I think another reason is that the whole global South has witnessed a fast-growing higher education industry, and the wider academia industry has developed so fast over the past 1 decade or 2 decades. And notably, China has initiated a set of policies or talent schemes to attract not only Chinese scholars return to China, but also those foreign scholars. So as we can see, more and more foreign scholars started to come to China to work and to live. And one of the very popular option for them is the Sino-foreign universities, such as Shanghai, Shanghai, NYU, Nottingham at Ningbo, or and also another, and I think there are many other.
Kunshan, Duke.
Kunshan, Duke. Yeah. So those Sino-foreign universities, because they have quite globalized or international working environment, and also they offer globally competitive salary packages. So more and more foreign scholars started to think it is a really ideal option or destination for them to come to China.
Yeah, I think that also changes the whole landscape of migration and aspirations, right? Because the ways in which they think about their future have also been transformed by these new opportunities available in countries that are emerging.
Yeah, especially due to the pandemic, the global higher education landscape has become significantly transformed and reconfigured. So the value or attractiveness of coming to the North, I mean the West, to study or work has to a certain degree become shaken. So more and more Chinese international students who who used to plan to go to the West, but now they are reconsidering their options. So the Sino-foreign universities I just mentioned have actually become a better option compared to foreign universities in the West. So I think this is another interesting phenomenon that we can study in the future.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much, Professor Wang, for your time. And for those of you who are interested to learn more about these latest transformations, please read Professor Wang's work. So once again, thank you. And we look forward to reading more of your research and projects in future.
And thank you. I'm so happy to have shared my research with Juan and the audience of this interview program of Bristol. So thank you so much.